Hello and very warm welcome to the second session of the Capital Dialogue, a special series that the Sunday Guardian Foundation is hosting with us here on NewsX to mark the founding of India's new Parliament building. We have with us Dr. Jitendra Singh, who holds many portfolios including Science and Technology, Earth Sciences, the Department of Atomic Energy, Department of Space, and the PMO, and he's going to have a riveting conversation with us about space, citizen-centric governance, and of course Jammu and Kashmir. Now, if you've been in the Modi cabinet, by definition you are diligent and extremely hardworking. But I've had the pleasure of interacting with Dr. Jitendra Singh for a long period of time, many years now, and he's an extremely humble, very erudite, and a very genial person to interview, to speak with, and of course interact with our audience at the Capital Dialogue today. With me is Professor Madhav Nalapat, the editorial director of the Sunday Guardian. And as is our format, we'll be making sure that as much interaction as possible so we can have a stakeholder-centric conversation. Dr. Singh, thank you so much for joining us, and what a pleasure it is. You've been speaking a lot about the concept of citizen-centric governance. What does that mean, and how do we define that to our audience?
No, at the outset, I owe to thank you for the very kind introduction. I think more kind than I deserved, actually. And also thanks for having got me here at the Capital Dialogue. Now, yeah, as far as the governance is concerned, I think it's a very proud coincidence that we have as the head of state somebody like Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who has who is possibly the only head of state who has completed more than 20 years or 21 years as the head of a government, and that to a democratically elected head. And if you ask me to define what it actually would mean, I think now that we live in an age of sustainable goals and sustainable models, right from UN around to all the parameters, I think this was the most sustainable governance models that he's given to the world, in fact. And broadly for three reasons. A, that it's a model which has sustained over the last 2 decades and promises to sustain in future as well, as you see right now. B, that it is a model which has defied the principle of diminishing returns. With each passing year, instead of there being some kind of an anti-incumbency, the dividends go on increasing. And C, I think this is a model which gets strengthened after each challenge. For example, as Chief Minister, he came across the challenge of the infamous earthquake that happened in Gujarat, and very recently as Prime Minister, the COVID pandemic. And therefore, this, when we talk of citizen-centric governance, as you said, this is actually an offshoot of this model. And how do we sustain it? I think it's going to be a huge kind of a case study for the researchers and scholars of political science and even otherwise. What are the factors which have led to this kind of sustained model of governance? And I think the single most important factor is the person around whom this is developed, the persona of Prime Minister Modi himself. And broadly, if you see his 2 or 3 traits which have actually, keep him apart from others. A, that he has the capacity to take out-of-box decisions. B, that he has the capacity to break the taboos of the past. C, that he has a futuristic vision with a connect with the people. So if you ask me to just sum it up with a single instance for each of these factors, I think one of the earliest decisions taken soon after this government came in, because the oath ceremony happened on the 26th of May 2014, as you very well recall. Within 3 months, in the month of September, we did away, and that is incidentally related to my department that I am linked to, the DOPT, and that was of course with the indulgence of Prime Minister Modi. We did away with this age-old practice of getting the documents attested by the gazetted officers, which was basically a dubious legacy of the British Empire, which should have been done away many decades ago. But we did away. And when I made this announcement, somebody asked me from the media, I said, what if some youngster fudges his certificate? I said, no, look here, the message should go across the country that now we have a government headed by someone like Modi, who has the capacity to trust the youth of this country. And we have more than 70% of this population below the age of 40. How are we going to do business if we don't learn to trust them? Now, as far as breaking the taboos is concerned, the second part of the discussion, as you mentioned earlier in opening remarks, is the space. I'll come to that a little later. But Space had all along functioned behind a veil of secrecy. It was only 3 years back, which you very appropriately reported as the unlocking of the space happened. And within 2 years, we have now more than 100 startups from the private sectors. It's been opened up to the private public participation, and day after precisely, we are going to have the first ever rocket being launched by a private party. So we'll come to that later. So, but I've asked, now coming back to the governance, when you talk of citizen-centric, I think you will recall, all of us in fact in this room, one of the earliest dictums that Prime Minister Modi gave us was maximum governance, minimum government. Now sometimes it sounds very vague, sometimes also very philosophical. What does actually it mean? So to my mind, as I understand, I think it would refer to a government which is facilitator but not an intimidator. As once he himself put it in Hindi very appropriately, कि सरकार का अभाव नहीं है और प्रभाव भी नहीं. So there is a government which is standing by you, but at the same time not intimidating you. And we have actually walked the talk. Like for example, the Prevention of Corruption Act, when we said zero tolerance against corruption, we also took care of not being intimidative. And I think that is one of the best instances, because the Prevention of Corruption Act of India came in 1988. After 30 long years, it was sought to be amended precisely in 2018. Number of new provisions brought in which were compatible with the contemporary times. For example, in addition to the bribe taker, now the bribe giver would also be culpable for offence. And so that you could move against corruption, but at the same time could also make sure that a well-performing officer with integrity, honesty, could be given kind of environment, a work-friendly environment where he could put in the best of his potential. Similarly, citizen centricity also counts for accountability, transparency. When you talk of maximum governance, we had a grievance cell here. I'm sure many of you in the room will be amazed. Before this government came in 2014, the number of complaints being registered from all across the country was just about 2 lakh. Just for 2 lakh. Today it's gone up to nearly 30 lakhs within 8-9 years. And when I was sharing this with some of the media friends the other day, somebody quipped, he said, does that mean the number of complaints has gone up against you and against Prime Minister Modi? I said, no, it's not like that. The answer to this came about 150 years ago when Mirza Ghalib said कि जब तवक्को ही उठ गई गालिब क्यों किसी का गिला करे कोई. तो गिला तब होता है जब तवक्को है कि उसका जवाब आएगा. We have been prompt, we have worked hard. This is a government which we actually worked 24 hours. I myself used to make random calls to the complainants to check whether the disposal was actually authentic as it had been put across. So we achieved 100% per week disposal. And very recently we also introduced human face to it. We put it online, we connected all these states. There were some of these states which had created a website just to live up to the guideline, but nobody would visit the website. So unless you have a very transparent, vibrant grievance system, you cannot actually have transparency. Now most of the information regarding the government decision is on public domain. Like for example in DOPT, the highest decision-making body is ACC, the Administrative Committee of Cabinet. And you could actually check to authenticate. Many of the decisions regarding empanelments and promotions of the officers reach the officer later. He prefers to check it from the website. You are so prompt to do it. Similarly, if you ask me, I think there's some which is not actually looked at. Most of the governance reforms, if you ponder a little deeply, are actually also having a lot of social economic implications. They are also actually social reforms. And like for example, he spoke from the airport, from the ramparts of the Red Fort, when he spoke about abolishing of interviews in order to give a level playing field to every youth regardless of his socio-economic strata, so that there is no malplay or no misappropriation happening in recruitments. Similarly, in pensions, there are a huge number of reforms. Unfortunately, pension is a department which doesn't get much of a coverage either in media or in the social conversation, also doesn't generate much of interest. But there's so much of reforms. Just to cite one or two. For example, there was a rule in the pensions that if a person dies before completing 10 years of service, his family is not entitled to family pension. We did away with it. I said, did you ask him before dying that he's not getting it? If you didn't ask him, why do we have no right to deprive him? So this is a government which has till date And being related to DOPT, I have been witness to that, abolished as many as 1,600 rules which had become obsolete with the passage of time. Most of the governments take pride in saying, okay, हमारे वक्त में ये हुआ, हमारे. Now this will be the government will saying, हमने हमारे बंदे ये खत्म कर दिया. The interviews were abolished. Then there was a rule that a divorced daughter was not entitled to her father's pension, deceased father's pension, if she did not have a proper judgment from the court. We thought it was unfair. We know of so many cases, the judgments don't come for decades together. How can you deprive them? We did away with that. Similarly, the pension, we made minimum pension limited not less than 1,000 rupees. And that program was launched somewhere in September 2014. And we launched it across the country. When I was assigned to be there in Chandigarh, we had an elderly lady, very elderly. She came and fell at our feet. We were all embarrassed when we rose him up. She said, you won't believe that 35 rupees मेरी फैमिली पेंशन थी आफ्टर माई हस्बैंड डाइड, और 25 साल से मैं हर रोज़ पहली तारीख को यहाँ आती थी. तो आप मोदी जी को जाके कहना कि पहले आप लोग आए होते तो मेरे जीवन की कथा कुछ और होती. सो दीज हैव ह्यूज सोशल रिफॉर्म्स एज वेल. नॉट ओनली, similarly elderly pensioners had to produce themselves before a doctor every year to prove that they are alive. I said, being a medical professional, I have seen people asking for death certificate, but to ask a living being to give a life certificate is not very human. So we said we have technology at our disposal. Yes. We introduced biometry, and very lately, I think about 8-9 months back, I was told that the biometry also is not very reliable after a certain age, maybe after 75-80. So we are the first in the government to have introduced face technology recognition. Yes. So I think governance model which Modi has given is actually also a social reform model, and that is possibly one of the important reasons why it has sustained its promises.
Well, I for sure know this is a subject close to the heart of Professor Nalapat. Professor.
No, I just want to say that, the minister is looking out some very portfolios like space, portfolios like atomic energy, that have become world beaters for a long time, for 60, 70 years, unlike so many other departments. And I quite agree with him that today the emphasis is not just on all of government, it's on all of the people. And I think that is a change that Prime Minister Modi has made. But I would like to ask the minister's opinion, how is it, what is the magic in, for example, our space department, our atomic energy department? What is that special magic that has made them perform so well and put India at the top of these two very high technology fields?
No, I'm glad you asked it. I think this is something that someday would be a matter of research again. There was never a dearth of caliber, never a dearth of potential capacities. Can you imagine Vikram Sarabhai thinking of a space program at a time when America and Soviet Union were already planning to land on the surface of moon, and we were singing nursery rhymes ke chanda mama dur ke. So in that milieu we had a gentleman, a youngster with stars in his eyes, and starting from a very primitive setup, carrying the launcher on the carrier of his bicycle or whatever. So I think what has changed now is that Prime Minister Modi had a special penchant for all the scientific endeavors. He also realizes the importance of science and technology in the times to come, which is, of course, the time has started. And he gave us full play to give vent to our potential. The potential was so huge, so incredibly huge, one can't imagine unless one pointed out. Like, for example, the other day I was telling to some of our American counterparts when we were in Washington, just in a lighter vein, without the risk of displeasing them. I said, do you remember Neil Armstrong was the first human being to land on the surface of moon, which he did in 1969, happened to be from America. And the BBC prepared a film. He took a stroll around and delivered that famous dialogue, which is part of the history. He said, one small step for man, but a giant step for mankind. It's gone down in the history. So I said, he went around, had a look around, but he missed the presence of water being there. It was our mission later on, few years later, Chandrayaan, which went there and picked up the pictures of water, which has a huge relevance to human habitat, H2O. So, see, amount of potential. Now, Prime Minister Modi has unlocked space. That's, I think, the biggest boost, impetus given to this department, because all along they were functioning. So unless, as we know, I agree with you, we have to have an integrated approach, whole of a nation, whole of government approach. So unless we integrate with the private sector, we couldn't have this. Now it's open for public-private participation. And day after tomorrow is the first launching of the private. And now it's also being, our launching pads are also being rented out for the foreign launchings.
Yes.
So huge economy. I think space is going to be a major area of generating India's economy.
Yeah.
Same way atomic energy, you rightly mentioned. When Homi Bhabha thought of starting this nuclear program in India, I sometimes wonder what would have people thought of him. Hiroshima, Nagasaki had just happened less than a decade ago. In early 50s, he started this program, and he made a loud proclamation that our program will be for peaceful purposes. I'm sure nobody would have trusted him. They would have thought that either he's camouflaging something or he's taking a high moral ground. But today, indeed, our atomic energy is becoming an alternative source of energy. It is being used in agriculture sector to increase the shelf life. So I think one of the important contributions of the Modi-led government has been to use space as well as atomic energy as tools of ease of living in the life of a common citizen. Now, for example, space technology is being used in every sector. In railway sector for unmanned railway crossings. Earlier on, you had so many rail accidents. We arranged for a meeting between the space scientists and all the other departments. You have gadgets which could, through space satellite, could detect a potential obstructing object a few kilometers away. In the construction of smart cities, in construction of highways, everywhere you have space technology now. Space technology has virtually entered every household. So now it is no longer confined only to the launching of rockets.
Yes.
So that is, I think, and same is the case with atomic energy. So that has given our scientific fraternity also an encouragement and motivation to give full play to their inherent intrinsic potentials.
And it's their safety also, Minister, because a safety, progress, desirability to do R&D here, not take some scholarship and go off abroad or face threatening that issues that we've seen in the past. So much on space, it's a big deal for me because Skyroot is going to be launching day after tomorrow, but Agni Cool and Pixel and so many of them whom we've been interviewing. But let's take questions in the order that let's look at governance issues first, then we look at space and J&K. So on governance issues, please, if you can get microphones across. Sir, take it. Then Atharji has a question, Mr. Mani. Sir, go ahead. Mr. Jindal.
Doctor, my name is Akash Jindal. My question, is about Kashmir. Now, people in POK, our brothers, they are a troubled lot. I salute Prime Minister Modi, Home Minister Amit Shah and you for removing Article 370 and 35A. But when can we bring happiness on the faces of our brothers in Pakistan occupied Kashmir? When can they be practically part of India? And secondly, when can we have 5 lakh tourists rather than some terrorists in Kashmir?
Okay, I think Akashi, the second is a practical question. The other one is when are we reintegrating POK is a big one.
I just want to ask, sir, हमें वो शमी कपूर की फिल्मों वाला झूमता नाचता गाता कश्मीर शिकारे में वो कब मिलेगा?
Okay. Let me take a few questions and I'll come back to you, so we'll go faster. Atharji, can we get a mic to Firozji at the back also, please? Go ahead.
Hi, sir. It's always a pleasure to hear you. You give a right perspective and a very positive one. So our hope rekindles. But I have to just give you a feedback that very good governance, very good initiative, and totally focused on the citizens for ease of living. It is there, no doubt. And major work has been done. But in last 4 or 5 years, the negativity in society, both in business as well as the common people, has increased a lot. I will just suggest you are at the helm of the affair, to please eliminate it. Okay. Make the people happy.
Okay.
In this debate only, I have said, we have forgotten culture, music, art, happiness, ishq or mohabbat. we are entangled in so many irrelevant
Morale
things.
boost. Okay, let somebody.
That
lot
is
of
one
people-
thing.
Feroz ji, I'm making a note of the questions, sir. I'll run you through them. Feroz ji.
Thank you very much, Rishabh, for having called me here, because I have a very specific question for Dr. Jitendra Saab. Now, you remember, Jitendra Saab, at some other channel we met, and I think you had your officers, Mr. Chandra Mohan and Junaid Mattu also. And there you promised that you will resettle the Kashmiri Pandits. They are in my heart. And you also uttered a Ghalib Sher, एक और मैं बोल देता हूँ. हमने माना कि तगाफुल ना करोगे लेकिन तगाफुल मीन्स लेट हमने माना कि तगाफुल ना करोगे लेकिन खाक हो जाएंगे हम अब आप समझ गए सो यू नो दैट टाइम ऑल्सो यू promise that you will settle or resettle Kashmiri Pandits, right? और जैसे हमारे भाई ने बड़ा अच्छा सवाल किया कि वो कश्मीर कब आएगा है वादी कश्मीर है जन्नत का नज़ारा हम चाहते हैं जल्द से जल्द आ जाए बहुत
Any audience that you take questions, Kashmir is obviously number one. Yana and Sajid are also there. I'm coming to you guys. There are policy people here also, so please don't be shy. I think I see Jayjeet. I'm sure this is going to be a policy question. Go ahead, sir.
Indeed, it's a policy question, Honourable Minister. Two quick questions in terms of ease of living is one, the Prime Minister, the Honourable Prime Minister has been very keen to have benefits being delivered to those who don't get it and to eliminate those who should not be getting it in that process. Let me take a quick example of a real case in Maharashtra where this tribal handicapped pregnant woman was supposed to get 4 different benefits because she falls into these 4 different categories. She was getting none. And it's very difficult for her to go and knock on the 40 departments of the ministry to find out what is it that's relevant for her. So what we had proposed was a very simple thing. Can we flip it? And can she go and say, I am this, I am pregnant, I am tribal, I am woman, and you tell me what is it that I can get benefit of. Now, these are systems are not futuristic anymore. Your governments, like the ones in Karnataka, has already implemented it. Can that be taken to the rest of the country?
Okay.
So that's first question. Can I have a quick
Jayjeet,
second
go ahead.
question, please? The second question is that it more relates to Ministry of Home Affairs, but police is an important part of ease of living. In the military, you have something called the military police, which keeps a check, a lid on the forces. But in regular civil policing, we don't have an oversight over what the police is doing. So if I have an issue, I don't have any entity to go out to and report that. So there is no oversight of the policing from a citizen perspective. If that layer could be created,
Okay.
I think some of the issues could be resolved.
Okay, so
Thank
why
you.
don't we do it in reverse order, sir? Flipping governance, that if I can go to government and say, listen, I am in this category, what benefits are accrued to me from various schemes? Then we'll discuss police and I'll do this in reverse order.
No, I think we are already into it. Like, for example, in the ministry that I look after, there are 6 or 7 departments and ministries related to science and technology. I virtually integrated them. I hold joint meetings, and now I am in the process of putting up a single national portal for all of them. So that an individual, why only an elderly person, even a youth, if she enters and gives the choice or preference, then the program will direct him where to go. So we are already into it. The very fact that 1600 rules have been done away with is also part of the same exercise. There was so much of status quoist approach over the last 70 years, which I wish had not happened. I'll just give you 2 instances to substantiate what you said. You have a very substantial argument. We have so many NOCs, like for example during COVID times, one of my students, young medico, wanted to set up a COVID clinic. And very smartly he thought that he would have a solar plant that will be cost effective also. He was asked to get an environment clearance by the Ministry of Power or Department of Power, wherever state
for a
he was.
solar plant.
Yeah, he was in Tamil Nadu or whatever. So he was trying to convince them. He said, sir, I got this precisely for this reason, that it might not require, and still you are asking. This is no, the list is asking us to do so. We have done away with that at the central level at least. Similarly, I'll give you one more example, which our senior friend who is no longer around us, Manohar Parikar ji, we were very close to each other. So when he just became, because I also come from a technical background, so he was also from IIT, when he first time became Chief Minister. So I asked him, I said, how does it feel like? So he narrated me an anecdote, and which is now related to the department which I am heading, and we have done away with that, the pension certificate that I was talking. He said a pensioner came to me and he said, my pension has been held up for the month of March or whatever, because I didn't have a living certificate or whatever. So he said I took a sympathetic view. I asked somebody to help him and get a certificate. So usko 2-4 mahine ka jo pension tha wo mil gaya. Then he says he came back to me after a fortnight. So I said ke bhai sahab aapka to kaam ho gaya tha, why are you back again? Bole sahab मार्च से लेकर सितंबर की मिल गई लेकिन फरवरी की नहीं मिली.
Yes.
क्योंकि वो सर्टिफिकेट में फरवरी इंक्लूडेड नहीं था.
So I was not alive before March.
So I mean, since both of us were from different backgrounds, even I had never seen North Block, South Block before I came into the government, because we didn't have any business to go there. So I had never been to any secretariat anywhere. So he was also the same genre. So this, of course, I agree with you. And that is why, not only this, to go one step ahead, if we have to move on, we have to move on in integrated fashion. And if we have to move on with integrated fashion, we have to follow certain common benchmarks, which are also being followed in the private sector, also globally, because now we are part of the global world. And we are actually very
Dr.
keenly
Singh, the other thing on citizen oversight, how can we improve it?
I think that itself is happening. It is now the accountability, the monitoring is not only confined to the human beings. There's a lot of artificial intelligence which has taken over, a lot of technology which has been taken over. You are actually being watched everywhere. You think you are not, but it's not so. And the monitoring is going to be so much, and so the as you said, that who if you don't have a military police, who would watch them? Now, I was telling the other day, I said, like for example, the ACRs or APRs are written for the officers. Sometimes an officer may not have been very fair to his junior, because the precise moment when he was writing that, he was off the mood for whatever reason, or maybe he had some personal biases. Maybe tomorrow we use artificial intelligence tools
To identify the bias over a period of time.
Through data. To be biasless.
Okay.
Already we have developed an AI tool, which was with the collaboration of IIT Kanpur, which is launched a pilot project for corruption petitions, so they can smell between the lines how much is the credibility of the petition and what more beyond this.
Yeah, because the
so I
biggest
think the
problem
scrutiny is going to happen in a very big way, technologically across the world.
Okay, fingers crossed. A big question, of course, Pandit resettlement, sir. It's a.
No, see, you have to see the Kashmir as a whole. Now, taking his observation also, this year we have had a tourist rush which was much, much higher than the last 30 years ever. And very recently, and because I have been traveling in and out of Kashmir almost 4 times in the last 1 month or so, just about 2 weeks back, one of the common demands that came to us was from the Taxi Operators Association. They said, please ask the government to immediately give us new permits, because we are borrowing taxis from Jammu and Punjab. Such high is the... And you know, some of the hotels were charging 1 lakh per day. Though that's not fair, but that's a testimony to the kind of pressure. So you can't say, I'm sure, like Shami Kapoor became identified with Kashmir. Very soon this is going to happen, because this is a cost-effective manner. In fact, most of the film producers will themselves look for India, look for Kashmir, because this is a cost-effective Switzerland, a cost-effective, location. Even the last movie that Raj Kapoor was producing before he suddenly passed away, Henna was actually being shot in Kashmir. Then suddenly the militancy set in, and the rest of it, they had to actually hunt for a location which looked similar. By that time, of course, Raisa was passed away, and the rest of it was done by his progeny. So they went to Vienna all the way. So I agree with you. That is going to happen, because it will happen in the natural course.
So is that the
now,
first
as
step?
far
Sir?
as,
is that the first step? Do we wait for the resettlement?
No,
for
not
things
at
to
all.
become
Now
better?
Now, see, Kashmiri Pandit is, of course, it's a very unfortunate exodus which happened. I think such a large section of population being hounded out of their homes and hearths all of a sudden, and becoming homeless in their own country, you don't have any instance like that in the history of mankind. But having said that, you must also realize this is a part of the overall terror scenario that was prevalent there, and many of the governments in the past were not actually sincere about getting rid of terrorism, not even sincere about getting Kashmiri Pandits back into Kashmir Valley. It was only the BJP, even when we were not in power, when they were hunted out in 1990s, it was BJP leaders like Mr. L.K. Advani, Murli Manohar Joshi at that time, who were actually striving very hard to get their children admitted in some of these states. Now, as of today, overall militancy has gone down. Even if you see statistically, there will be no stone pelting for the last 2-3 years. Earlier on, what used to happen? A leader from the center would be traveling to Kashmir Valley. A hartal call would be made from Pakistan, Islamabad, and the shops would be shut down in Srinagar. Now you saw recent. I am coming to your point. Now recently, Home Minister travelled to Kashmir, held rallies which are widely attended. There is no hartal call, nothing of that sort. So the scenario has changed. Whatever killing has happened is soft target killing. Not only Kashmiri Pandits, even otherwise. It's not only Kashmiri Pandits. Though I agree with you, if you talk of Kashmir's composite culture, which has been known all over the world, it is incomplete without the presence of Kashmiri Pandit. Because that culture will not exist if Pandit is not there. But having said that, the killings have been soft target killings, not confined only to the Pandits, the others also. Because the militants on the run, they try to make their presence felt by hitting out to a soft. But I'm sure that is also going to come down. Because
pretty sure this
as the overall scenario, gets under control, this would.
I'm pretty sure
but at
this
the same
question
time, there is no hesitation in saying that we have all the will, all the commitment to improve their lot and to do whatever best possible for the Kashmiri Pandit community.
Okay, I'm sure this question will come again and again. On the two small points, you've already covered tourism, sir. On countrywide morale and POK reintegration, sir.
No, as far as POK integration, see, again, I didn't want to sound political in this meeting. One of the changes which has been brought in by Prime Minister Modi is that he has tried to cultivate a culture of walking the talk, which was not happening earlier. Now this POK thing, the resolution was brought in the parliament by the Congress government headed by Narasimha Rao. We had voted for it. So it was a unanimously passed resolution 1993. We said that if at all there is an issue between India and Pakistan, it is only that of how to retrieve the part of Jammu and Kashmir which continues to be under illegal occupation of Pakistan. But like most other decisions, same is the case of 370. It was the Congress-led government at that time. And the Prime Minister, who was himself the protagonist, the then Prime Minister Nehru, also had endorsed the phrase temporary, but allow it to become permanent. So actually we are living up to those commitments which have been fallen out through Congress hands. So we would simply just because nobody believed that 370 would ever be revoked, we have done it. So I'm sure this will also happen. And if at all it happens, it will happen only by a government led by Prime Minister Modi and government formed through BJP.
Okay.
No, time is not, you can't be, very dogmatic in these issues because there's so many, it's a multifactorial outcome, but it will happen. As you've seen so many other things happening. Now Ram Mandir, the Shilanyas was done by Rajiv Gandhi. Now, why don't you ask why DDC elections happened for the first time in 70 years? I'll tell you so many decisions which were taken by the Congress government and betrayed by the Congress. Like for example, 73-74 amendment of the Panchayat. This was brought in by Rajiv Gandhi government, wherein all the central funds go directly to the local body. Why was it not introduced in Jammu Kashmir, though you had all these years Congress National Conference-led government? So they were actually falling back on their own commitments and on their own promises. We are actually fulfilling
I don't need to introduce the subject of Kashmir, I think, now. So we'll take another round of questions and discuss space. Can I get a mic to Yana? Adarji, 1 second. I'll address it again. Can I get a question to Yana? Just 1 second. Let Yana take it. Come to you next.
Hi. Good afternoon, sir. So I have two questions actually. One regarding the policies that you were talking about. So most people in India agree that the way we can challenge China is through an economic challenge, which is why Modi ji was so emphatic about, he was putting a lot of emphasis on Make in India. Not only to make India Atmanirbhar, but also so that we can challenge China because China holds, because it's doing a lot of hostile activities against India. And so it also holds a big market share in the world because most things are made in China. So Modi ji is trying to start the Make in India campaign. And at the same time, Modi ji is also very passionate about environmental conservation. So isn't this like a dual challenge that India is facing? Environmental conservation as well as Make in India, so more industrialization. Okay. So I want to know what are the industry-friendly policies? Since you spoke about, the country for the citizen. So what are the what are some changes in the industrial policy that you guys have introduced to make?
Okay, big employment generating industries. Ajay ji.
Mr. Minister, I must compliment you for all the work which you've done, this government has done during the last eight and a half years, and specifically in your departments. I want to just refer to a department, atomic energy one, which we haven't so far probably talked about. You would recall the civilian usage agreement at which Dr. Manmohan Singh had staked his government virtually to get the support of others passed through the parliament. Ever since then, we haven't seen much of a progress in the capacity installed in the country. It's been marginal. At that point of time, you would recall 2 projects each allotted to Russia, USA, France, and none of them has seen the light of day.
Yeah.
But given the fact that for climate change, fossil fuel change, etc., it is a benign one, what are we doing? And is Ukraine a source which we've never explored? If it survives.
Okay, for atomic energy, of course, there was Fukushima in between. Can we get a mic at the back also, please?
Rishabh, one more
please,
related to his about space. The whole space research, be it travel to Mars, Moon, etc., are highly capital intensive and research oriented. Isn't there a need for India to be piloting greater coordination through setting up an effective international organization for that kind of work,
yes, in
rather
fact,
than duplication?
We have to take the lead, sir. We got left out of the atomic frameworks. There are several questions. Can I get Wing Commander Kushwaha here, Gauri? Can I get Wing Commander Kushwaha here? Then a microphone at the back. Dr. Kohli, I'm coming to you.
Jai Hind, sir. Deeply appreciate the reforms that have been initiated by the Honorable Prime Minister in the space domain. The industry has a few requests. One is an early implementation of the space policy and the introduction of the bill so that there's some clarity in the industry. In this regard, sir, there are 3 points which need your blessings. Point number 1 was, sir, that creation of market demand for the huge amount of startups that are coming, for them to become viable. This is where I think opening up of the government sector is very important. Point number 2 is that the startups which are now like the Agni Cool and Skyroot, which is about to launch a rocket. Now they are hardware intensive companies which require a lot of investment. The moment they start crossing a certain level of investment, then the shareholdings go down. Now it's very important that we create financial institutions in this country where our own companies are owned by Indian financial institutions rather than going outside the country. So it's a strategic intervention which I submit that the government should look into. And the next thing which is very important, the last point is that the very important structural reform that has happened under Mr. Modi is that Department of Science and Technology and Space have come under your leadership, under one control, which means that Survey of India and Space have come together. My submission is, sir, that there is a huge disruptive work that can be done by our industry by combining the data and exploring this data and developing applications.
Okay, yeah,
and if you could also include statistics and program implementation, then it becomes a very, very great opportunity space for the Indian industry.
Okay, point made. There's the mic at the back. Yeah, Dr. Kohli, go ahead, then let's take your questions back. Just 1 second, sir, let Dr. Kohli go ahead.
I, sir, have a very quick one here. Sir, we talk to a lot of investors who want to go to J&K. And one common thing which they have indicated every time is that they are short of skilled manpower. So, sir, I would like to know from you as to what is the government specifically doing to bring in trained manpower, because that is hampering some of the investments being made in J&K.
Okay, let's take a question at the back. Martand, I see you. I'm coming to you. Let's take a question at the back. Sumit, I see you also.
Good afternoon, Your Excellency. I would love to go ahead and have the message from you with regards to self-help groups who have been at the bottom of developing human resources like Space Development Nexus for over a decade. By making real rockets and launching them for over a decade at the school, at the university levels, and at the same time encouraging the youth of Jammu and Kashmir as to how is it or what are the steps that they should take to bridge their skill gaps in terms of contributing towards the entire
segment. That's a good idea. Lots of questions. I've made notes. I'll do another round immediately after this. Okay, so let me pick it up, sir, with Yana's question on sustainability, and industrialization?
No, I think all the three questions, including the one very appropriately put by the wing commander, have some common linkage. We are into an era of startups. Now, first, let's go back. As researchers, when we do a prospective study, we also do a retrospective. Before 2014, the number of startups in this country was hardly 350. Now it's crossed 80,000. We have more than 100 unicorns. We stand number 3 in the world as far as the startup ecosystem is concerned. So there is a considerable headway being done with a conscious effort. So that means the will and the intent of the government is very clear. B, now the second question, which is related to what she has and very rightly you mentioned, which I always have been saying, the next level would be sustainable startups. Like we talk of sustainable. So how do we have sustainable startups? For sustainable startups, again, you have to have a very close linkage between the research, the academia and the industry. And industry being the most important pillar, which unfortunately the earlier governments didn't realize. Like for example, we have a huge body called CSIR, Council of Scientific Industry Research. When this government came in, I said, possibly the eye went missing all these years, which is industry. So to have sustainable startups, you need to have industry as equal stakeholder right from the beginning, which I have been very passionately propagating. For example, if I have a project, let me first do an industry mapping or the market mapping. What does the industry require? So let me be very humble, modest and unassuming, asking you what is your requirement. Then if you say, now this is, so okay, then I'll give you the technical know-how, I'll train the startup for you. Are you ready to fund with me? I've already done this. I started a project now, 100 crore I did. From the government side, I made the other side also invest 100 crore. So when the amount pinches a businessman, he doesn't let go of the project. Also doesn't let go of the man or the woman he has invested in, the individual he's invested in.
Yes.
So we need to have a much, much closer integration. Secondly, now you asked how people or youth from Jammu and Kashmir or other areas. I think there is something which is not seldom talked about, the change in mindset. The mindset is not changing. Your mindset has got stuck up in sarkari naukri. You find young boys, it is very disheartening to see them sitting on a dharna for a contractual job, 6,000. I was sitting in one of the collector's office just about 6 months back, and there was some kind of, unrest going on outside, some protest. So I told the collector, I said, why don't you go and counsel them? There's so many startup opportunities now. And government is actually coming forward to do hand holding. So I said, why are they sitting for 6,000? He said, no sir, it's not 6,000, they're sitting for just 2,000. So that kind of, particularly in some of these northern states, I was said this in Himachal Pradesh, I was there last week. I was there in Uttarakhand just 4 days back. I said, don't you realize when we say the next 25 years India's economy is going to rise the pedestal, where is this economy coming from? All these unexplored potential areas, and the most unexplored areas in the Indian peninsula have been the Himalayan states, the hill states, are huge resources in Himalayas, and the second is the coastal states. You have 7,500 long kilometer coast and all your assets inside the sea. We've already started the Samudriyan thing. So in the years to come, it will not be the illegal mining which would be a concern for the law agencies. It will be the illegal mining inside. So when we do value addition, it is going to from here. But unfortunately, these are precisely the states, the hill states, where the startup movement has not picked up in the same fashion or in the same pace as. So I think much can be contributed by youngsters
maybe we need to get
you.
incubators to be looking at these hill states. Okay, on the issue of atomic energy, sir, and boosting our nuclear production.
No, I agree with you. There were constraints before this government came in, and the constraints primarily because of the financial reasons. We could not expand the manner in which, and as a result of which, most of our nuclear plants, atomic plants remain confined to few of the South Indian states. Same was also the case with the Space Department, confined mostly to the south, and also the headquarters of both these departments were also elsewhere out of Delhi for legacy reasons, because Sarabhai passed away in the middle of night and Satish Dhawan had to take over. He could not move out of Bangalore. The headquarters became Bangalore. So, but what we have done now, coming straight to what you asked, we have again, as I said, some of the out-of-box decisions, some breaking the taboos of past. Atomic Energy Department has been permitted to enter into or engage with joint ventures, which was not happening earlier. So for the time being, of course, since we've just set in, the joint ventures are with the PSUs, maybe then we'll go next step. So, for example, you have a rich PSU like ONGC. They invest their money and I invest my technology or my knowledge. And the result is that we have started moving to the other parts of the country. One of the first nuclear plants in North India is going to happen just about 150 kilometers away from where we are sitting right now, a small town called Gorakhpur in Haryana, not very far away from here. Haryana, not Bihar wala, no, not UP wala, not UP wala, this is a small town, it's close by here. So similarly space, we have on the pattern of the teaching institute which we have in Trivandrum, which is a world-class institute, it's 100% placement in NASA from there. We have started 2 more institutes, one at the NIT campus in Agartala, Northeast, I said let's start from Northeast and North, and one in Jammu in the Central University. So we are actually into that, we are very conscious of what you are saying.
Okay.
And I think when we engage like space, a lot of, quantum jump has happened through this PPP model being allowed.
Okay, but when on large financing for these space corporations, because when they are in the few $1 million zone, they are being able to raise funds, but when they have to raise funds in tens of millions of dollars, how do we provide a mechanism for that?
You see, now ultimately it is going to be a global integration. We are part of the global world. The benchmarks are global. Whether we like it or not, we have to have. Now somebody says adopt technology. I said no, it's not an option. It's a compulsion. If you have to live up to those standards. And now the other countries also are coming forward to this kind of a thought. We are possibly heading where we will have cooperation or collaboration, government to government, and also government and private sector of that country, along with the government and private sector of the other country. For example, some of the countries have already, like Finland and other countries, some small European countries.
So you're confident the funding will come? As like, for example, Skyroot goes, if it launches the 3 satellites, if it needs to raise further funds, it'll find it.
As we evolve, this will also evolve.
Okay.
Because we are now opening up. See, till few years ago, even this could not have been visualized.
Okay, so promoting rocket science in schools, rocket clubs, education.
Yeah, but you see, what is also important for us to realize and appreciate, which I have been telling even people from outside the world, because that is not, they have not done that, is that we have used space technology to a great extent to the other sectors.
Yes.
We have not confined it only to launching rockets, which is something which the other countries never actually very seriously got into. So now space technology is being used for road construction, for highways, for railways, telemedicine in a big way, robotic surgery. So we are actually into much larger spectrum now.
Okay, Professor Nalapatha, a small interjection.
Minister, I want to say that you're, in the sense that the Prime Minister's office, you've been in that for a very long time. It makes a big difference in the overall functioning of government, and not only center, but it percolates right down to the lowest levels of government. So what is the change in the functioning of that very important, that very critical office that you have seen since Prime Minister Modi took over in 2014?
No, I think overall, if you see, if broadly speaking, there has been a very conscious attempt to introduce a work culture which is different from what was being practiced earlier. For example, you take any of these schemes rolled out by Prime Minister Modi, whether it is Ujjwala, whether it is Prime Minister Awas Yojana, the list is prepared by the collector and the benefit is given to the needy, regardless of caste, creed, religion, region, not even asked which party does he vote for, not even being told that you next time vote for us. So I think Modi has introduced a culture of reaching out to those who actually require us and filling the gaps which had been left unfulfilled for whatever consideration, the extraneous consideration. So that's a huge change in the approach itself as far as and most of these schemes have been public welfare. And lot of now 360, checking and 360 monitoring as far as appointments are concerned for the right person in the right place. So I think there's quite a departure from the kind of the culture that was being followed earlier. We have also been, part of that setup where certain benefits were doled out for certain sections who were a convenient vote bank, the others deprived of that. Here you cannot. I'll just give you one example. I was looking after Northeast for 7 years. They have a technology which is yet to come, because some of the technology, of course, now it will be very soon available to us. Israel was the first to develop it, specialized fruit parks. So they came out with a citrus fruit park technology. When I got to know of it, I asked the ambassador, I said, could we also have it in collaboration? He said, yes. And I said, what will be the most suitable place for you in India? He said, Mizoram. I didn't even ask him. We allowed him to go there. And when it was launched, I said, you only cut the ribbon because you don't get an opportunity, the ambassador. So they were so excited. Now why I'm saying so has a huge political undertone to what the professor is saying. Mizoram is a place where we don't have a single MLA. One MP comes from there, can't make a government, can't spoil a government. The party is different. But in spite of that, the first ever center of excellence of citrus fruit park was set up nowhere else. So there was a kind of a message also being sent out that now this is the kind of culture that we follow, and then leave it to the wisdom and discretion of the people to decide which kind of government they wish to have.
We'll take a couple of more rounds of questions before we'll have to let the minister go. Rajanji, can you get a mic to Rajanji, please? And Vedji, I'm sure, please chip in. Rajanji, go ahead. I'm seeing you. I'm coming to you.
Hello. Sir, I'm pretty sure in the coming year, the number of tourists going to Kashmir will increase manifold. But how does that make the 5 lakh Kashmiri Hindus who have been pushed out of the valley to get rehabilitated over there and get security? There are a lot of, questions which have been raised, but the solution basically, whatever I have heard from the learned people, why can't we have gated communities made from them? That's number one. Number two, the strategic question, POJK. You see, in the popular parlance, we still call it POK. Through our documentaries, what we made it a point to call it POJK. And now Ladakh also, Gilgit, Punjab, Baltistan is added. POJK is a strategic question for us. The string of pearls of China is extending as far as the land part is concerned through CPEC. So what is our roadmap about that?
Okay, all right. I knew these questions would come again. Martan, quickly, I'm sure this is on space.
Yeah. My question is about the India conducted a ASAT test in April 2019. In near future, do you think that India is going towards the path of space militarization or space weaponization? Because ISRO has been telling that we are all for civilian purposes. So what is your stand on that? Secondly, regarding the private players in space, see, there is a pride factor when it comes to ISRO. Do you think that the people of India would see the same pride factor if private players emerge more and more, and the government takes its hands away from the ISRO?
Okay, pride for private sector and space militarization. Okay, I see. Can I get a so Sajid, please? I see Professor Siddharth. I see you, Mr. Mamani.
Hi, sir. My name is Sajid Yusuf. I'm from Srinagar. Let me give you a short, brief introduction about myself. I'm the same guy who hoisted tricolor on the clock tower for the first time in the history of India. I'm the same guy who met you recently when the Home Minister Amit Shah was in the Raj Bhavan, and we had some kind of discussion. So I have a just short question. On the floor of Parliament, when abrogation of Hetman, the Honorable Home Minister, he said that we will give the clean leadership to the Kashmir Valley, clean and young leadership. So I can't see a single face, the clean and young leadership. I have seen the same Mehboob Mufti, Umar Abdullah, then we have seen the Altaf Bukhari, then Sajjad Loan, now Ghulam Nabi Azad. Can you please show me a single young face in the Kashmir Valley which you have, which you will introduce in the future?
I can show you a mirror.
Thank you.
There are two of them sitting right there. Okay. RVS Money, please.
Honorable Minister, you spoke about Northeast, and we all know, at least the people who are in the interest of the nation know that you are the person who sealed the Northeast in real terms with the rest of India prior to 2014. Northeast was an annexure. We all know that the rapid infrastructure development you did, the disaffection was countered by your honorable colleague was MOS in Home, Mr. Kiran Rijiju, and the livelihood issue, as you had already said, were very well undertaking, not only in this but also in the textile, handloom, silk and several other sectors. Can't we replicate it in other areas like the Kashmir, which now we have total control, number one? Because before 2012 or 2011, if you see the annual plan presentation of the Chief Minister of Kashmir in the Niti Aayog or Planning Commission, as it was Yojana Bhavan, it was 95% Valley, 3% Jammu and 2% Ladakh. But now Ladakh is, I can show you with some level of conviction, now Ladakh is independent. So can't we replicate the same model of
Okay, good point. Let's take one more thought, then I'll get the question.
addressing the disaffection, rapid infrastructure and livelihood issues?
Gauri,
Simple.
Sumit.
Just repeat the same model you have. Thank you.
Namaskar sir, my name is Sumit Peer. Sir, I have one question for you, rather two or three, because I've been waiting for a while. The first question is, when it comes to COPs or any of the climate summilans, we are meeting all the norms. We are pioneers in solar energy, we have done the photovoltaic set, Suryaputra Alliance and all. Yet when it comes to energy, we are blocked by China. And when it comes to those technical work, China is doing it again and again. We are meeting all the commitments. We want to have the nuclear power, but NSG is not letting us in. What is our strategy to counter that? That's question number one.
On energy, yes, okay.
So the question number two is, when we talk of Kashmir, sir, a lot has been done. I mean, sea change is there. But still, Pakistan will keep on sending terrorists and jihadis. What is our plan to give a message to them? This concept of Islamic terror and jihad is not sustainable at a conceptual level.
Okay.
Because unless until we give that message, it will keep on coming. And last question is, just Rishabh, one point. When it comes to ISRO, sir, I worked with ISRO, I worked with EADS, I've been to Ariane Space, worked with all of them. Our guys at ISRO are fantastic, far beyond. I mean, they have all the commitment in the world. But when I ask a kid, which are the number 3 topmost space agencies, he doesn't know ISRO. My kids, I have seen them wearing a NASA t-shirt. I have not seen them wearing a ISRO t-shirt. What are we doing on the communication part of it?
Make the t-shirts, sell them, make the t-shirts. Okay, I'm going to try to clump them together. Let me knock off these ones. ASAT test and space militarization, sir.
No, I think the least is talked about that, the better it would be. The matter actually not per se falling in my domain. It's also a lot to do with the defense ministry. And I think these are some of the decisions which are taken depending upon the interest of the nation. And as far as we in the Department of Space is concerned, we are into absolutely peaceful agenda.
Okay, popularizing ISRO, sir, making people...
That also links with the t-shirt thing. That is because, as I said in the beginning itself, the entire Space Department and the ISRO as well was functioning behind a veil of secrecy. So you don't even know. When you and I were in school or college, we rarely, seldom, once in a while we came across a small news item in a remote column of a newspaper that a launch had been done at Sriharikota. Nobody could even figure out where is Sriharikota. So unless you open it to the public domain, it won't happen. Now it started happening. You have these startups from all over India now, making a beeline over there.
Okay, if you want to pride in startups, watch NewsX. So please get after Skyroot, after Agni-Cool, Pixel. So many of them are working on it. Okay, now on pundits and gated communities in J&K, let's pick on that. I knew the question would come up again. On creating gated communities for pundits, sir.
No, I think, now as you said, when would that happen? Once peace is restored. See, peace and development share a reciprocal relationship. If peace gets disturbed, the development stops. If the development doesn't happen in the expected manner, it creates unrest. Now, for the first time, we have a government which has, taken it with all the sincerity at its command. I would rather, at the risk of sounding little, impolite, say that the governments in the past had developed a vested interest in the continuance of terrorism. Because they were the beneficiaries of 10% voter turnout, and then, same persons would become MPs, MLAs, generation after generation. So it was, quite compatible with their dynastic design. For the first time now, the allocations, as was being mentioned very rightly, there was a huge sense of discrimination happening. Now at least I can bear out, and we have the statistics to support, in the last 3-4 years, there have been equal distribution of all the allocations, all the funds, all the resources. Some of the projects which were allocated simultaneously for Jammu as well as for the Kashmir divisions have incidentally picked up faster in Jammu division for reasons of, the situation there being not very friendly or compatible for certain projects. So that is happening and now when will you go back? I think a day will come when the peace is restored. Everybody would like to go back to Kashmir, not go back but others as well. So we should ideally think of a situation where you don't have to create some kind of a protective zone. You should feel secure to walk in. And that is the ideal situation. And that will be in keeping with the traditional culture of Kashmir.
Minister, quick thought on NSG. We'll take a last couple of questions and wrap up. We are already short time. Quick thought on NSG, sir. I'll just come, Atharji. And on NSG, so Nuclear Surprise Group.
India has been repeatedly, right from the beginning, ever since Prime Minister Modi took over, in every conference, every summit, he has been reiterating India's commitment to clean energy, to the climate concerns. Unlike many other countries of South Africa who have had a different stand, they said now the Western countries have done what they have done, or what they had to do as far as industrialization, and now they are taking a high moral ground and delivering sermons. We didn't do that. I agree with someone who was saying that industrialization and the clean energy, I see the lady who's now left said that. So there is a challenge. We are trying to balance the two. We are moving ahead with our industrial design, the industrial evolution, at the same time also committed to give clean energy and to become zero by 2070.
Okay, last question, Professor Siddharth.
Jai Hind. If you recall it, in our meeting when you were to inaugurate my book last year, I raised this issue on the crystals. That is, so many of these crystals are siphoned out of the country, and we do not going to be having a regulation. Same is the case with the type of fossils that we have. Now, with the type of an earth science resource, which is a heritage, which we have, and you incidentally happening to be manning both of these ministries, earth sciences and space, is it not the right time to map our entire of the earth science resources with space?
Okay, we are already way out of time, but it's a very technical question, sir.
I think absolutely so. I would not hesitate agreeing with it. But you see, again, the prioritization was not appropriate. The other day when this government came in, and the then Earth Sciences Secretary happened to be a friend, because I was also moving around. I said, if you do a small survey in Delhi, can anybody in Delhi tell where on earth is the Department of Earth Sciences?
It's on
Even
Lodi
now.
Road. It's on Lodi Road.
Yeah. So now what I'm saying is, see now, and I agree with you, earth sciences and space technology have to work in tandem. The huge lot of this deep ocean mission. So its credit goes again to Prime Minister Modi. He spoke from the ramparts of Red Fort, made it part of his Independence Day address, referring to deep ocean mission, which is actually being spearheaded by earth sciences. So that kind of prioritization at the policy planning level has happened only in the last 2-3 years. The geospatial guidelines have been changed. The drone guidelines have been, relaxed. Otherwise, what was happening? Youngsters were developing drones in the premises of IITs because they had been allowed, and then, surreptitiously selling them in the market. So we have relaxed that, so we made it more realistic. And I'm sure we are going to move in that direction. There's no other option. Otherwise.
Yeah, we need to find this lithium and all. I'm totally out of time. As promised, I have mostly kept quiet and let the minister speak and you to ask questions. So we are totally out of time. I'm hoping such opportunities come again and again. But for now, to Dr. Jitendra Singh, thank you very much. So let's have a big round of applause, please. He's taken on as many complicated subjects from one extreme to the other altogether. It was a pleasure to host you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rishabh. I really enjoyed it. I am going back wiser than before.
And all of us. We take a break. Thank you for watching NewsX.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.